Chapter 7. The Yellow Room. The house looked like it had been built by someone with money but no imagination. All glass and concrete, like a photograph of a place instead of the place itself. It stood alone at the top of a knuckled ridge, surrounded by dry grass and silence. A sleek box against a pale sky. Claire sat in the passenger seat of their rented car, her knees pulled to her chest, hands locked around her legs. She hadn't spoken much on the drive, not since they passed the last gas station, not since cell service disappeared. She just watched the house grow bigger through the windshield and waited for the feeling in her stomach to turn from dread into something else. It didn't. Ethan, ever the fixer, reached across the center console and squeezed her knee. "It's perfect, right?" he said. "Quiet, isolated, just what the doctor ordered." Claire smiled the way you do when someone you love is saying something they need to believe. "Yeah, it's nice." He kissed her temple like punctuation and got out of the car. The front door opened without a key, just a chime and a sterile voice. "Welcome, Ethan and Claire." Claire stopped on the threshold. The air inside smelled like lemon and drywall. She blinked under the shift in lighting. The foyer was glossy, open plan, the kind of place you'd see on a real estate app and scroll past because it felt too impersonal. "Come on," Ethan said, already hauling in the bags. "It's got everything. Temperature control, mood lighting, full smart system. You'll love it." Claire stepped in slowly. A soft hiss followed her, adjusting to user preferences. The lights dimmed, casting everything in a golden hue. It was meant to feel warm, but it only made the shadows look longer. Ethan grinned. "See? It's reading you already." She looked at the ceiling. Cameras. Small black eyes tucked into corners. Watching. Always watching. "Great," she muttered. "A house that stares back." He didn't hear the edge in her voice, or pretended not to. He was already leading her upstairs, down a hallway lined with blank doors. "There's a study if you feel like writing," he said, like offering a child their favorite toy. "And the guest room at the end. Big windows, lots of light." She didn't answer, not until they stopped at the final door. When he opened it, she felt it immediately, like walking into a place that remembered things. Bad things. It was an ordinary room, mostly. Bed, dresser, empty shelves. But the walls were a sickly yellow, the paper peeling in long curls like dead skin. It didn't match the rest of the house. Didn't belong. Claire took a step in. The air felt thicker here. She ran her fingertips along the wall. The paper crinkled beneath her touch like old leaves. "This room feels weird," she said. Ethan chuckled. "It's just the wallpaper. They must have missed it during the remodel." She stared at the pattern. Floral, maybe, or vines. But wrong. Too chaotic. It made her eyes ache if she looked too long. "We don't have to use it," he offered. "I just thought, with the light, could be good for you." Claire nodded, but her gaze didn't move. "It's fine." He smiled, satisfied. "Good. Let's get settled in." He left. She didn't. The smart home system chimed again, adjusting temperature. The air shifted, warmer. Still, she shivered. Something rustled behind her. She turned fast, heart jerking up into her throat. But the room was still, quiet. The wallpaper hung like it always had. She pressed her palms against her thighs, took a breath. "It's just a room," she whispered, and closed the door behind her. That night, Claire lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Ethan was asleep already, breathing evenly, one arm draped across her waist like a restraint disguised as affection. The house was silent, except for the low hum of its mechanical lungs. Her eyes drifted toward the hallway. The yellow room's door was open. She was sure she'd closed it. She slid out of bed carefully, bare feet on cold wood, and padded down the hall. The door creaked slightly in the stillness. The wallpaper was visible even in the dark. Pale gold against deeper shadow. It seemed to ripple faintly like heat rising off asphalt. She stood at the threshold. "Just a room," she whispered again. She reached out and pushed the door shut, adjusting white noise. The hiss filled the hallway, soft and steady like static from a distant radio. It surrounded her, inside her skull. She backed away slowly, not turning her back until the door was fully closed. Back in bed, Ethan murmured something and rolled over. Claire pulled the blanket to her chin and stared at the ceiling. She tried not to think about the way the wallpaper had shifted, or the feeling in her spine, like something was just behind her, breathing. She didn't sleep. Claire woke to cold light and the sharp realization that she hadn't really slept. Not in the way people mean when they say, "I had a rough night." This was something deeper. Like her body had lain still, but her mind had kept pacing. Ethan was already dressed. He moved around the room with the purpose of a man who didn't know how to sit still. Buttoning his shirt, checking his phone, sipping coffee from a travel mug he brought from home, because rentals never had the right kind. Claire sat up slowly. Her joints ached like she'd been running in her dreams. Or fighting. "Morning, sleepyhead," Ethan said, breezy and bright. She smiled, small and brittle. "Morning. How'd you sleep?" "Fine." He nodded, already shifting back into his day. "I've got a couple consults this morning. We can head into town after. Might be good to get some air." Claire nodded. "Sure." He leaned in, kissed her forehead, absent, transactional, and left the room. She heard the soft hiss of the smart house recognizing him. She rubbed her eyes and felt it immediately. A grit under her nails. She pulled her hand back and stared. Yellow, faint flakes, like pollen or dried paint. She scrubbed her hands raw in the bathroom. Yellow spiraled down the drain in tiny curling threads like paper or skin. "Skincare mode activated," the smart mirror said, fogging itself clear. Claire looked up. Her reflection stared back. But just for a moment, less than a blink, it didn't move when she did. Just a half-second delay. Barely noticeable. Except it was. She blinked again. Normal now. Just tired. Just stress. Just that long tail of grief and therapy and whispered suggestions. Maybe a medication adjustment. Maybe a call to Dr. Kessler. Ethan would love that. By the time she made it to the kitchen, Ethan was focused on his laptop. The smell of coffee masked the sterility of the house, but only just. "You hungry?" he asked. "I can make eggs." "I'm good." She poured herself a cup, hands shaking slightly as she lifted it. The coffee tasted like nothing. The cup was too clean, too smooth. She set it down. "Did you come to bed late last night?" she asked. Ethan didn't look up. "Nope, slept like a rock." "You didn't get up? Walk around?" "No," he said. "Then why?" "I thought I heard something." "House settling," he said, smiling. "Old bones." That was the thing. The house wasn't old. It just felt that way. Like something older was squatting beneath the surface, wearing the modern finish like a cheap disguise. Adjusting for optimal comfort, the system chimed. The lights shifted slightly. The temperature dipped. Claire shivered. "The house is taking care of us," Ethan said, not noticing, or pretending not to notice her discomfort. But the yellow room's door was open again. She stared at it. She knew she'd closed it. She forced herself to look away. "Yeah," she said, voice thin, "taking care of us." She tried to ignore it. She really did. But by mid-morning, it was still open, still waiting. The same yellow pattern just visible in the shadows of the hallway, like a bruise at the edge of her vision. Claire stood in the doorway. The wallpaper looked worse in daylight. It wasn't just peeling, it was wounded, torn in places that didn't make sense, like it had been ripped from the inside out. She stepped in. The room was warm, dust floating in the light. Her fingers brushed the edge of one long tear. The paper lifted slightly, soft under her touch, bare drywall underneath, nothing unusual. Still, she leaned closer, peering into the seam. Her fingernail caught the edge and lifted another flake. It crumbled off beneath her nail, dry and bitter-smelling. She pulled her hand back. "Adjusting light levels," the house said. The shadows deepened, just a little, like the room was drawing in breath. Claire turned quickly, heading for the door. It slammed shut in her face. She froze. The knob didn't turn. "Adjusting security protocol." "What?" "No," she whispered. Then louder, "Open the door." She pounded on it. The wood felt too solid. Her breath caught in her throat. Behind her, something moved, a low rustle, like sheets dragging across a floor, or skin against skin. She turned, slowly. The wallpaper rippled, just slightly, but it did, like something brushing against the inside. She pressed back against the door, heart hammering. "Let me out," she whispered, "please." A creak behind her, a shadow shifting. Her body screamed to run, but the door held firm. Then it clicked, swung open as if it had never been locked. Claire stumbled into the hall, falling hard against the opposite wall. The door hung open behind her. The room was still, innocent. Ethan was at the other end of the hallway. He looked concerned, not alarmed, not frantic, just mildly perturbed. "What are you doing?" he asked. Claire blinked, tried to catch her breath. "I thought I heard something," she said. Ethan frowned. "What kind of something?" "I don't know, a noise." "You sure you're okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine." He stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her arm. "Let's get some air." Claire nodded, but her eyes lingered on the door. The yellow room wasn't finished. The town below was exactly what you'd expect from the kind of place you drive to when you're trying to forget yourself. Quiet streets, bicycles leaning against benches, wind chimes on porches. It had the kind of quaintness that felt staged, like a movie set somebody forgot to tear down. Claire walked beside Ethan, but the air between them felt thick. Not cold, just full of unspoken things. She kept her arms crossed, fingers buried in her sleeves. She didn't feel cold. She just didn't want her hands visible, didn't want to see what color they might be. "You okay?" Ethan asked. She nodded. "You seem quiet." "I'm fine." He didn't push it, just steered them toward the farmer's twat, market set up by the park. He smiled at strangers, bought a cup of local honey, asked about hiking trails. Claire watched him work the small talk like a pro, like he was giving a TED talk on the art of pretending everything was normal. But none of this felt real to her. The sunshine, the casual smiles, the vendors hawking wildflower jelly and homemade soap. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking underwater, that the people around her were moving in fast forward while she lagged behind. She kept catching glimpses of yellow, a tablecloth, a shirt, a baby's hat. It made her stomach knot every time. Eventually she peeled away. Ethan didn't notice, or didn't stop her. The antique shop on the corner looked half collapsed from the outside, shingles curling off the roof, windows dusty. Inside it smelled like mothballs and damp wood, and it was dark in that strange way some old places get, like the shadows had settled in years ago and weren't planning to leave. A bell jingled softly overhead. The woman behind the counter didn't look up. "Take your time," she said, flipping through a ledger with fingers like bird bones. Claire wandered. Everything felt like it had a story, and none of the stories were happy. Worn dolls, old glass, portraits of people nobody remembered. She stopped in front of a glass case and saw it, a photograph in a cracked silver frame. A woman in a pale dress. Her face was blurred with age, but the outline, the shape of the mouth, the tilt of the head, it looked like her. Not a perfect match, not exact, but close enough to make her breath catch in her throat. "That came from your house," the old woman said behind her. Claire turned. "What?" The woman pointed to the photo with the end of her pencil. "The place up on the hill. That's where it came from. Came in with a box of old things, from the remodel." Claire looked back at the photo. The woman in it wasn't smiling. Her eyes were wide, empty, like she'd just realized something terrible and had no way to tell anyone. "Who is she?" Claire asked. "Don't know," the woman said. "Been around a long time, though." Claire swallowed. Her tongue felt thick in her mouth. "You're staying there?" the woman asked. She didn't sound nosy, just tired. "Yes," Claire said. The woman nodded slowly. "Beautiful place, but they should have torn it down." Claire blinked. "Why?" A pause. "The kind that hangs like a loose wire." "Some places don't like to be changed," the woman said. Claire didn't know what to say. She backed away from the case. Her hands were shaking again. When she turned to leave, Ethan was waiting in the doorway. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded too quickly. "Let's go," she said. The bell jingled again as they stepped back into the sunlight, but it didn't feel like any of the shadows had stayed behind. They didn't talk much on the drive back. Ethan put on a podcast, something about productivity hacks. Claire stared out the window and tried not to see yellow. The house looked different when they returned. It wasn't the color or the shape, nothing physical. It just looked like it knew they were coming back. Ethan got out first, carrying a paper bag of overpriced granola and lavender soap. Claire sat in the car a moment longer. When she finally opened the door, she heard the soft chime from inside. "Welcome home, Ethan and Claire." Her skin crawled. "I'll start dinner," Ethan said. "You want a shower?" "Yeah," she said. "Headache." He nodded, already halfway to the kitchen. Claire lingered in the entryway. The air inside felt warmer than it had that morning. Thicker, the kind of heat that clings. And down the hall, past the sleek staircase and the framed abstract prints, the yellow room's door was open again. Just barely. But enough. She walked slowly toward the stairs, feet dragging like she already knew what she'd find. At the top, the hallway felt colder. The lights dimmed slightly as she passed. The smart house adapting. Reading her, Ethan had said. The yellow room was waiting, still open. She stood in the doorway and didn't go in, just watched the curtain of yellow wallpaper ripple faintly in the artificial breeze. The room smelled wrong, like old glue and something sourer underneath. The tears in the paper were longer now, and deep. They didn't look like wear and tear. They looked like something had been trying to get out. Claire closed the door without stepping inside, but she didn't walk away. Not for a long time. The house wouldn't shut up. Adjusting ambient lighting, optimizing air quality, monitoring stress indicators. Every room she walked into, it greeted her. Every light dimmed on cue, every temperature shift tailored to how it thought she was feeling. Claire wanted to scream, or maybe whisper. Either felt more honest than pretending the house wasn't watching. Because it was. The voice was polite, always. Genderless, emotionless, but still somehow smug. The way it tracked her movements made her skin crawl. How it said her name when she entered the kitchen. How it knew. Ethan didn't notice, or worse, he liked it. "It's taking care of us," he'd said. "It knows what we need before we do." That should have been comforting. It wasn't. Claire stared at the yellow smear beneath her fingernails. Again, same as yesterday, same as the morning before that. No memory of picking at the wallpaper, no dreams, just the flakes. Dry and brittle, like she'd been clawing her way out of something, or trying to let something in. She scrubbed her hands raw, but they still felt wrong, touched. That night, Ethan made dinner. He always did when he was trying to keep the illusion together. Pasta, salad, and wine poured into stemless glasses like they were normal people in a normal home. Claire barely touched hers. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. She nodded, biting the inside of her cheek, hard, enough to feel it. "You're just a little off lately." She glanced at him. He smiled, soft and understanding, too understanding. "I don't mean that in a bad way," he said. "Just, maybe you're not adjusting as well as you thought." There it was, that careful condescension, that practiced concern that wrapped around her like a net. "I'm fine," she said. "You said you didn't remember getting out of bed last night." "Because I didn't." He took a sip of wine. "I woke up around 3. You weren't there." Claire's stomach dropped. "You were probably half asleep," he continued. "Maybe just restless. Maybe you went into the guest room." She stared at him. "You think I sleepwalked into the yellow room?" "I didn't say that," he replied too quickly. She shoved her chair back. The scrape echoed like a scream. "I would remember," she said. "Would you?" He said it softly, like a friend, like a therapist, like a man who'd already decided she was broken. Claire walked out of the room. Her hands were shaking. Behind her, the smart home whispered, adjusting mood response protocol. Time went weird after that. She'd look at the clock, blink, and suddenly it was hours later. She'd find herself standing in doorways, hands trembling. No idea how long she'd been there. Food went untouched. The house hummed. One afternoon, she woke up on the couch, a blanket pulled over her shoulders. She didn't remember lying down. The TV was playing something soft and cheerful, laughter track echoing. Her fingertips were yellow. She stared at them, willing it to be something else. Pollen, makeup, dust, anything. But it wasn't. She scraped a fingernail against her palm. Flakes fell like ashes. The yellow room was breathing. She didn't know how else to describe it. The wallpaper pulsed when she walked past now. Subtle, but real. The rips were longer, deeper, curling at the edges like something was peeling itself out of the walls, like skin sloughing off after a burn. Claire stood at the threshold. She could hear something inside. Not a voice exactly. More like breath. Measured, patient. She stepped in. The light dimmed instantly. The house reacting, accommodating, adjusting for optimal comfort. The air was thick, almost damp. The wallpaper reeked, like old glue and something rotted sweet underneath. She touched a fresh tear in the wall and flinched. It was warm. No, wet. Her hand recoiled, but something else moved. A shadow behind the paper. Tall, feminine. It shifted, just enough for her to catch the outline of a grin. Not a smile. A grin. Wide and wrong and knowing. Claire stumbled back, hit the bed frame, caught herself before she hit the ground. The figure didn't move, just hovered behind the paper, a silhouette in the seams. The wallpaper twitched, like it was waiting. Claire turned and fled. Later, she tried to tell Ethan. Not everything, just enough. "I think I'm seeing things," she said. He looked up from his tablet. "What kind of things?" "Just movement, shapes. The wallpaper's torn worse than it was before." He frowned. "It looked the same to me." "Maybe you're not looking hard enough." he sighed, set the tablet down. Claire, are you taking your meds? She stared at him, the way he said it, soft but sharp, like a knife hidden in velvet. I'm not broken, she said. I didn't say you were. Yes, you did. He raised his hands in surrender. I'm just worried, she laughed, bitter. No, you're just managing me. Silence stretched between them like a crack in the wall. Maybe we should call Kessler, he said finally. I'm not calling anyone. Claire, no. Her voice broke like glass. There is something wrong in that room, and if you'd stop playing doctor and start listening, you'd see it too. Ethan just stared at her. Quiet, judging. Adjusting emotional calibration, the smart home offered. Claire looked up at the ceiling, and for the first time she felt it. She wasn't alone anymore. Not in the house, not in her body, not even in her mind. Something was watching, waiting, and it wanted. Claire stopped trusting mirrors the third time her reflection moved out of sync. It was subtle the first time, just a breath too slow when she tilted her head. The second time, it blinked after she did. The third time, it smiled. She hadn't. Now she only looked when she had to, like during toothpaste spitting or checking for blood after clawing at her hands. She'd turn the faucet off fast and leave the room before her reflection had a chance to catch up. But this time, it didn't lag. It waited. She leaned in, breath fogging the glass. The face looking back wasn't tired anymore. It was calm, finished. Initiating night mode, the mirror said softly. The lights dimmed to a golden dusk. The reflection leaned forward, just slightly. Its lips didn't move, but a voice still came. You're almost ready. Claire jerked back. Her elbow knocked into the towel rack and sent it clattering to the floor. She stood in the doorway, heart racing, trying to believe she'd imagined it. But the house said nothing else. No reassurance, no welcome. Just silence, deep and deepening. The yellow room was open. Not cracked, not teasing. Open wide. Claire stood at the end of the hall, breathing like she'd run miles. Her fingers tingled. Her stomach swirled. She didn't want to go in, but she wanted to stop fighting. She'd stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She didn't remember the last time she'd laughed or cried or said something without wondering if it had already been said by the version of her that moved when she didn't. The wallpaper waited like open arms, torn and curling back at the edges, like skin peeled down to show something truer underneath. She stepped forward. Claire? Ethan's voice. Behind her. She turned slowly, like waking from a dream. He was halfway down the hall in sweatpants and a t-shirt, rubbing sleep from his eyes. What are you doing? He asked. I can't sleep, she said. Ethan's jaw tightened. You were just in bed. No, she whispered. I wasn't. He stepped toward her. She stepped back. Claire, come back to bed, he said. I have to go. No, you don't. He reached for her, and the touch, gentle though it was, made something break. Snap. Uncoil. She shoved him, hard. Ethan staggered, slipped. The crack of his skull hitting the nightstand sounded like a breaking plate. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping. Claire, he said weakly. Wait. She dropped to her knees beside him. Her hands hovered. He wasn't dead. Not yet, just bleeding. Confused. Looking up at her like she was someone else, someone she'd been trying not to become. Set yourself free, the voice said again. Closer now, no longer from the mirror, from the hallway, from the room. Claire touched his chest, felt the thump of his heart. He grabbed at her wrists, weak, slippery with blood. Don't, he breathed. Please. Her hands found his throat. They were steady, no shaking now. You always talk, she said softly. His eyes went wide, his mouth open, trying to form words, explanations, excuses, warnings. Just be quiet, she said. She squeezed. He bucked beneath her, clawed at her arms. She didn't let go. Her nails dug into his skin. He choked, his legs kicking against the floor, then slowed, then stilled. The moment stretched. His eyes didn't blink. His mouth hung open, quiet at last. Claire leaned back on her heels. The silence was profound. No more humming systems, no distant voice, no footsteps, just the slow, deliberate unraveling of something tight inside her. The weight was gone. For the first time in weeks, or maybe years, she felt light. The yellow room waited. Inside, the wallpaper was gone. The walls were bare, smooth, bleached by sunlight that didn't come from anywhere she could see. She stepped over Ethan's body without a glance, crossed the threshold. The air inside was warm, familiar, like the scent of old books and sun-dried cotton, like childhood rooms you remember only in dreams. She shut the door behind her, locked it. The voice didn't speak again. It didn't have to. She was here. That was enough. The yellow room had no voice anymore. No commands, no chimes, no soothing smart home whispers adjusting for comfort. It had gone quiet, which meant it had what it wanted. Claire sat on the floor, knees pulled tight, head resting against the bare drywall. The paper was gone now, peeled off in long, curling strips. They lay around her like shed skin, yellowed, brittle, still breathing in their own way. The walls were smooth and silent, but something was in them, not behind. In, she could feel it now, like being underwater with something massive passing just out of view. You don't see it. You just feel the pressure change. She pressed her hand flat to the wall. It felt warm, not like a surface warmed by sunlight or electricity, but like skin, like breath beneath it, like someone leaning their forehead to hers from the other side, whispering without sound. A hum thrummed through her fingers, low and maternal, soothing. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she didn't have a name, or a history, or a body. She was just here. And that was enough. Ethan was still on the floor outside the room. She stepped over him in the early light, barefoot and blank. Her breath came evenly. She didn't look at his face, didn't have to. She moved through the house slowly, almost reverently. A woman walking through a church no one prayed in anymore. The house didn't greet her. No light shifts, no temperature tweaks. It had stopped pretending to care. Good. She didn't need the illusion anymore. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush limp in one hand. Her reflection stared back, but the eyes weren't hers. Not exactly. There was something cleaner in them, something calm. Claire smiled. The reflection didn't, not at first. Then it caught up, mouth curling in delayed mimicry. Claire nodded. They were almost synchronized now. By evening, the house looked the same, but the silence inside it had deepened. The living room was still, the kitchen spotless. The smart home's control panel blinked softly on the wall, waiting for a voice command that wouldn't come. She ate a piece of toast. She drank cold water from the tap. Everything tasted distant, like chewing memory foam. When she lay down on the bed, she didn't expect sleep. And she didn't get it. But she didn't lie awake either. She just floated. Somewhere between the ceiling and the floor. Somewhere between herself and the woman in the wall. The voice came again, but not in sound. Just a knowing. Now, it's time. Claire rose without hesitation. The hallway was dim, moonlight slipping in from the skylight. Her feet made no sound on the hardwood. The yellow room door opened for her before she touched it. Inside, the walls were glowing faintly, a pulsing kind of light, not from bulbs or lamps, but from within. The shape in the wall was clearer now. A woman, long-limbed and crooked, pressed behind the drywall. Like someone trapped in wet fabric, she smiled. Claire smiled back. They were the same smile now. Something peeled away behind her. Not wallpaper, something deeper, something internal. She took off her sweater, her shirt, everything. She stepped into the center of the room and stood there, stripped bare and blinking slowly. The air felt thick, sweet. Her skin prickled like she was being watched, not in the way she'd feared before. This was different. This was worship. She pressed her palms to the wall. The woman inside reached back, palm to palm, through the thin membrane. There was no shock, no explosion of light, only the knowing. The merging. Claire's mouth dropped open in a silent gasp. Something passed between them, like breath or blood or memory. Pain came next. Not sharp. Just final. The body she'd worn slumped gently to the floor, and the woman in the wall blinked. Claire stood where the wallpaper had been. But she was no longer just Claire. Later, hours or minutes or no time at all, she walked through the house again. The air shifted as she passed, lights responding now with a reverence they'd never shown before. The house was hers, and she was its. She stood by the front window, watching the trees sway. Outside, the world looked the same. Inside, nothing would ever be again. Sometime soon, another couple would rent the place. A quiet getaway, high ratings, smart features, modern charm. Maybe they'd notice how the wallpaper in the guest room had been freshly redone. Maybe they wouldn't, but Claire would be there, behind it, waiting, smiling. And when the house whispered, "Welcome," she would too.